your marriage might be hiding secrets. Imagine if the one you love most betrayed you, what would you do? This is not a movie plot, it's a true story about how an ordinary person faces betrayal and revenge in marriage. My wife had a brief affair with her supervisor and she believed I was unaware of the situation. She was wrong. While she was with her lover, I was devising a plan of retribution. I am not a vengeful person. But when it comes to my family, there is no stopping me. Last July, I made the sad discovery of my wife's infidelity. Since then, I've been through indescribable misery. I never had any inkling initially. I couldn't believe my wife would betray me in such a way. During our 8-year marriage, I was blissfully content when faced with the potential of death or another terrible disaster. Renowned psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross postulated that people go through a series of emotional stages: denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. I recall hearing about this in a psychology class in college. Denial marks the beginning, and I was fully immersed in it. If Emma was unfaithful, it meant the end of our marriage. However, I fought to accept this fact. I wondered if I would go through all of the phases of sorrow for RL's death, and if once accepted, the pain and heartache would last permanently. In college, I met Emma while studying computer science. I was required to take an English class as part of the general education curriculum. Initially, I had little interest in studying the works of ancient poets and authors. My thoughts seemed to be completely focused on computer code and social activities. As a typical computer fanatic, I was tall and awkward. Academically, I was ordinary and never excelled in sports or extracurricular activities. However, my expertise lay in computers, making me a recognizable figure among colleagues, albeit one whose name frequently slipped their minds. My love experiences were restricted to brief rendezvous with Pauline French. After high school graduation, she seemed to take pity on me and we spent a few months together before she left. As a result, my fellow computer geeks and I entertained each other with stories of romantic prowess. Imagined scenarios with students we admire. Meeting Emma was a turning point in my life. Sitting opposite her in English class, I was attracted by her beautiful hazel eyes. I couldn't take my eyes away. Throughout the class, they were lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't until she was departing that I noticed the rest of her features. Emma had shoulder-length blonde hair with a slight curl, a lovely button nose, and lips that seemed to curve upward. Although not as tall as me, I assessed her height to be around 5'8". While I was not particularly experienced in evaluating such things, I couldn't help but note how nicely she filled out her shirt. Her lower half was covered in tight jeans, which complemented her shape well. To me, she was perfect. From then on, I made a concerted effort to sit beside her every day. After a month, she struck up a discussion, seeing my calculus books and asking if I could teach her in college algebra, a subject she was struggling with and needed to pass to graduate. I would have agreed to whatever she requested. We began meeting in the library after class on Tuesdays and Thursdays for study sessions. Despite my best efforts to remain attentive, having the most beautiful female by my side turned my mind to mush. However, it appeared to work, as Emma received a B on her midterm test when she found out. She couldn't contain her excitement, bouncing up and down and hugging me. The sensation of her caressing my cheek made me feel as if I were in paradise. Then I stated something utterly surprising to me. Would you like to see a movie on Friday? Sure. What time? Wait, what? I stumbled. I said, yes. Stupid. I nearly floated back to my dorm room. The following week felt like a fog. I even went shopping for new Dockers and polo shirts, my nerdy buddies constantly taunting me, but I took it in stride. I was counting down the minutes till our scheduled date. I somehow got it to Friday night. Our first date was to see the most recent Halloween flick. Not exactly sophisticated entertainment, it was a classic slasher film complete with gore, dismemberment, and cliched characters. I expected her to cling to me out of fear, but she didn't seem very concerned. Nevertheless, we had a great time. Emma and I would whisper about who would be the next victim on screen, and she was usually correct. Later, I received a quick goodnight kiss on her porch during our fourth date. She invited me into her dorm room, where we awkwardly acknowledged our love. Physically, it seems to have made a good effect on her, because she invited me back after our next date. We started a relationship after that. Surprisingly, we shared numerous interests. We liked the same movies, read comparable books, and shared a love of particular foods. After a few months, I became profoundly in love. As finals approached, I was convinced she had the same feelings toward me. We were happy right before the Christmas break. As we lay on her bed, I admitted my Feelings for her, saying she was the best thing that had ever happened to me. She smiled and replied, "I love you too, even." Though we didn't have any classes together, life felt fantastic during the spring semester. We continued to study together in the library after courses, picking up where we left off after the break. Our love grew stronger with each passing week. We spent spring break together, renting a cabin near the lake. Although I had planned to go hiking and fishing, we ended up spending the entire week inside the cabin. On the final night, I took one knee and proposed. She accepted. We graduated 3 months later and married 5 months after that. After graduating school, I got a job in computer security. Our company specialized in implementing security software into the computer systems of small enterprises with 10 to 50 workstations. My responsibilities included writing code to enable communication between various systems. Noah was my supervisor. Noah founded the company a decade ago with only 2 people. Through a series of mergers and acquisitions, the company grew to approximately 50 workers and thrived. Noah was not just an effective manager but also a wonderful mentor. About 5 years into my stay, Noah received an offer to sell the business. He added that a famous venture capital firm in the area was looking for a footing in the small business market to supplement their larger computer division. The financial incentives were too appealing to turn down, so he sold the company. However, he remained the manager, ensuring that we all kept our jobs. The changeover went smoothly with minimum disturbance to our work routine. We rarely saw the new proprietors, and Noah remained to oversee operations according to his established procedures. Emma accepted a position as the office manager for Drive. Hubert, a dentist, shortly after graduation. Her boss was a pleasant elderly dentist who resembled the archetype of the absent-minded professor, complete with the amusing spectacle of continuously looking for his spectacles. Despite his continual bewilderment, Dr. Hubert possessed great dental talents, gaining people from all around due to his reputation for brilliance in dentistry. When Emma started working there, the office was in disarray. Assuming they had been able to arrange an appointment, bills went underpaid, data were missing, and billing systems were obsolete. The situation was chaotic. Emma took on the work of organizing and upgrading the office, which yielded impressive results. Within 3 years, the doctor's practice had transformed, becoming the envy of the community. Revenues rose, office turnover has ended, morale rose, and the doctor's appearance improved. Moved. Emma was credited with everything, and I could not have been more proud of her. After we married, Emma and I moved into a tiny apartment near my employment. We made the most of every inch of space, making memories around every turn. We both resolved to prioritize furthering our jobs before starting a family. Every year we took a vacation around our anniversary. Our budget was tight at first, so we escaped to our lakeside cabin frequently. Our holidays gradually became more opulent, culminating in a trip to Disney World in Florida one year. After 5 years in the same flat, we decided it was time to look for a home. After a few months of looking, we discovered a cozy home with adequate space for our future family. We moved in and once again filled every space with love and sensuality. After almost 7 years, Emma returned home from her job filled with pride that the praiseworthy management and operational efficacy displayed within the acclaimed medical practitioner's establishment had gotten recognition. Notably, the doctor's clients included influential executive figures who, having witnessed the extraordinary improvement in the office environment, continued to transmit their positive thoughts to the doctor himself. Dr. Hubert, in turn, conveyed his unreserved appreciation for Emma's assistance. As a result, one of the aforementioned executives presented an offer of employment. Deliberations continued throughout the evening, and several days after that, a critical consideration arose regarding the potential consequences of accepting the offer. Visa versus family objectives. I was concerned that such a professional change would significantly delay our ambitions to start a family. Financial desperation did not appear to require fast acceptance, especially given the familial bond developed with Drive. Hubert. Emma, on the other hand, expressed a different point of view, highlighting the potential for professional progress that the given position could provide. She advocated deferring our family plans for a short period of time, promising to make up for any perceived loss. I had little choice except to give in a month. Later, Emma became the personal assistant to Cascade Capital's Vice President of Finance, Daniel Stewart. Unbeknownst to me, at The time Cascade Capital was the venture capital firm that eventually purchased the company where I was already employed. Initially, I didn't see any changes in Emma or our connection. Although our intimacy dwindled, I attributed it to the irregular hours she and her boss worked. She sometimes had to attend meetings with him late into the evening, leaving her fatigued when she returned home. Despite my attempts to reconnect with Emma, our bed life degraded further over time. She rejected all of my advances. I don't recall us being intimate during the 2 months leading up to the awards dinner. I never considered the possibility of her being unfaithful. I found out Emma was having an affair with her boss on the day of her company's annual awards dinner. I couldn't get myself to believe it. Every year her company holds a dinner to commemorate the previous year's accomplishments and recognize key individuals we'd been invited to attend. As we prepared to leave, I still struggled to accept Emma's unfaithfulness. I mentally reviewed the previous few months, but could not recall any signs our love for each other was profound. I completely trusted her and never questioned her loyalty. In retrospect, I realize I could have been blinded by love. I needed concrete evidence of Emma's infidelity, something I could see with my own eyes, so I set aside my doubts and concentrated on getting ready for dinner. I watched Emma closely as she prepared, noting every detail of her outfit, makeup, and even her choice of lingerie. Throughout the drive, I was mostly silent. Emma was thrilled because her boss, Mr. Elson, was receiving an award, possibly for the highest profits or the most affairs. If the rumors were true, my rage would undoubtedly arise soon. However, I knew I needed to maintain my composure in order to discover the truth. In that moment, I realized how Bruce Banner must have felt. Emma's meticulous planning ensured that we arrived exactly on time. When I arrived, Emma immediately attended to make sure everything was running smoothly, leaving me to observe. After about 15 minutes, he entered with his stunning wife. Why did he need Emma's help when there was such a treasure waiting for him at home? I went to the bar, ordered a drink, and observed him closely. I saw how people flocked to him and treated him like royalty. Sycophantic behavior toward the boss. I noticed his insincere smiles and attempts to please everyone. I despised him. Emma quickly joined him, while Larson's wife Caroline mixed with the other executive spouses. From a distance, I watched Larson and Emma interact, exchanging glances, subtle touches, and genuine smiles. It was clearly more than the typical assistant dynamic. As dinner began, Elson and his wife took up the head table with us. Nearby, Emma strategically selected a seat facing Elson. The evening turned into a tedious awards banquet with mundane speeches and unremarkable food. After dinner, the tables were cleared for dancing. I tried to keep Emma by my side, but she frequently had to help Stuart with various tasks. I tried to keep an eye on them whenever they were together, but distractions kept getting in the way. Emma's colleagues approached me for conversation, which hampered my constant surveillance. Emma and I danced a few times to both slow and fast songs, sometimes close together, sometimes apart. As midnight approached, I became weary. I suggested we leave, and Emma reluctantly agreed, but before leaving, she requested one last dance. The dance floor was where everything went wrong for me. Emma, without underwear, shattered my world. Throughout the previous dances, I could tell she was wearing panties, but now her backside felt exposed. There was no sign of the blue thong she had worn earlier. It left me devastated. In all of our time together, I'd never known her to go without underwear. Even when I asked, she always declined, but she managed to get it done for him. After saying our goodbyes, we departed. The drive home was silent. Each of us is lost in our own thoughts, but it was my personal hell. Emma hurried upstairs after returning home, mentioning that she needed to take a shower before bed. I muttered a response, but it didn't matter anymore. I removed my suit, I hung it up, and got into bed. Emma joined me a few minutes later, dressed in her long cotton night gown. She leaned over and whispered, "Wasn't that a glorious night?" I pretended to sleep. She kissed my cheek before turning away, her breathing soon indicating sleep. That's when the tears started to soak my pillow. The next morning, while standing beneath the scalding streams of my shower, I believe I experienced the full range of human emotion: love, hatred, fury, anguish, followed by thoughts of retribution, mingled with fleeting notions of forgiveness, feelings of inadequacy for failing to retain my partner's loyalty, foolishness for not recognizing her deception sooner, and finally a sense of triumph in discovering the truth. My mind was a jumble of conflicting emotions, a cacophony of thoughts echoing within. By the end of the shower, anger had taken over. He would face the consequences. In the days that followed, I looked for ways to punish him for his actions against my marriage. Murder was not an option, and I questioned my ability to ambush him with a lead pipe to his knee. There had to be another option. I acknowledged Emma's involvement in this disaster. She had deceived me, breaking her vow of fidelity. I reflected on our shared history, wondering where I went wrong, what caused her loss of respect, and when it happened. Did she succumb to his wealth and power? I had put my trust in her by investing years of my life in her, believing that those years would never be recovered. They would both face retribution. A few days later, the answer became clear. Emma had gone to the mall purportedly for new shoes, or so she said. However, her laptop sat on the counter, providing an opportunity for me to gain access to their company's system. Maybe I can exact revenge, given my experience in computer security. Hacking their system appeared to be within reach. I turned on her laptop connected to her work network and waited for the password prompt, knowing Emma, her password is unlikely to pose a significant challenge. However, before I began my first attempt, I noticed her day planner nearby. Married to a computer security expert, Emma wouldn't break the cardinal rule of password security, would she? I flipped through the day planner and found the section under P, where as expected her password was clearly written. As I dug deeper, I discovered a treasure trove containing not only her login credentials but also Stewart, as well as credit card numbers, bank accounts, birth dates, and social security numbers. I hurried to Kinko's to photocopy every page of her day planner. I saved further exploration of their system for another time. A few days later, an opportunity arose. Emma once again left her computer unattended on the counter. When she stepped out, seeing the opportunity, I turned it on and logged into her account with her password. Given her position as vice president, she had almost complete access to the entire system, including payroll, purchasing, accounting, and much of the production systems. I skimmed through the email system without getting into Emma's personal correspondence. I had no desire to delve into the details of her personal life, especially since I was struggling just to keep my cool. I was convinced there had to be a way to exact revenge hidden within this maze of data. My attention shifted to the accounting system, which to my surprise was quite basic and lacked robust security measures. Perhaps therein lies the key to my restitution. Similarly, a look at the purchasing system revealed a process that required invoice approval before payment. A potential vulnerability in the plan became clear to me. Tamper with approved invoices, reroute funds to Larson's account, and wait for auditors to discover it. It was a brilliant idea. Larson's reputation would be tarnished. Emma would lose her job, and their illicit affair would come to an abrupt end. The following day, I carried out my plan meticulously using information from Emma's day planner. I opened accounts in Larson's name at 2 different downtown banks. Armed with this information, all that remained was gaining access to Emma's computer to finalize the transfer. The following day, while Emma was at the gym, I took action. I used Larson's password to lay in and proceeded straight to the accounting system. There I located an approved invoice and accessed it. This invoice included a section for a manufacturer rebate. I imputed a 3% rebate along with Larson's bank details into the bank routing field, thinking that such a small percentage wouldn't immediately raise suspicion. I repeated the process with another invoice directing the rebate to a different bank account. After exiting the system, I poured myself a drink, opting for the good scotch this time. The first drink was a toast to my well-executed plan, while the second was to help me cope with thoughts of my failed marriage. I waited a few days, but nothing changed. No police visits, no newspaper headlines. Absolutely nothing. Damn, maybe the plan was solid, just not grand enough. So, seizing the opportunity, I accessed Emma's computer, made a few adjustments to some more invoices, and slipped in and out swiftly. Still nothing. Perhaps raising the rebate to 4% would do the trick. The following day, I infiltrated the system again, added a 4% rebate to 2 invoices, and exited swiftly. Our home life was strained. I had ceased initiating intimacy with Emma, and she never initiated with me either. I found solace in staying up late at night, engrossed in games featuring the Bulls, Blackhawks, Bears, or any other match that was on with cable. There was always some game to captivate me. Emma remarked on my newfound interest in sports. I explained that these games' names were significant and that everyone at work followed them. closely, I found it incredibly difficult to even make physical contact with Emma, the idea that she had given what was once mine to someone else made me feel dizzy after a hug or a quick kiss. I often found myself rushing to the nearest toilet, overcome with nausea. Then things took a turn the next day at work. Noah summoned me to his office. He explained that corporate wanted me to go to New York to update the branch offices. Security systems. I was puzzled. Yes, they specifically requested you. They need you to fly out Monday and return Friday to update all the workstations and servers in the New York office. But Noah, that's not my job. I'd handle software updates. Why me? Noah shrugged. I do not know. I tried to explain that to them, but they insisted. It has to be you. It instantly dawned on me. My wife's lover wanted me out of the picture for a few days, presumably for some quality time together. Resigned. I agreed. Okay, Noah, I'll go. Thanks. I've never seen corporate make demands like this before, and I hope it's not a trend. He handed me the airline tickets. As I took them, I realized this was just the beginning. As long as Larson was out of jail, this nonsense would continue. I resolved to step up my revenge plan. Later that evening, Emma and I sat down for dinner. The atmosphere at home had shifted recently. I'd been struggling to contain my frustration, and she'd been avoiding intimacy. I attempted to initiate some romantic moments, only to be met with rejection each time, though I doubted my ability to follow through. Even if she had agreed, I wanted to keep up appearances. Casually, I mentioned my upcoming trip to New York for the following week. Emma feigned sadness at my departure. It was during this conversation that I inadvertently learned of Emma's deceit. She slipped up, expressing excitement about the theater next week, then quickly corrected herself, claiming she meant the movie theater with her friends to watch a chick flick. I chose to ignore the lie. My mind wandered to Larson's wife. If Emma was concocting excuses, surely she was too. I felt the need for scotch, using it more frequently as a numbing agent, a habit I recognized as unhealthy. Emma's involvement in this New York charade put her in my sights. The next day I opened accounts in her name at 2 downtown banks. Before the weekend, I manipulated a few invoices online, redirecting funds to both Larson's and Emma's accounts. Their downfall was imminent. I sensed a shift within myself, a departure from the friendly persona I once portrayed. A darker side emerged, one I hadn't acknowledged before, and wasn't sure I liked. Frustration crept in as I pondered why their accounting team hadn't caught on to the thefts yet. The journey to New York proved both captivating and instructive. However, the flight was unpleasant. I detest flying since 911. Air travel has become burdensome due to heightened security measures, resulting in prolonged wait times and exhaustion upon arrival. This trip followed the same pattern. Upon reaching the hotel, I immediately retired to rest. The next day, I promptly tended to office matters, completing updates by 2 p.m. Yet the remainder of the trip was consumed by troubleshooting tasks, addressing issues such as worn cables, faulty graphic cards, and a malfunctioning hard drive. Ultimately, it felt like a waste of time, fueling my frustration with the affair between two individuals. Tuesday night found me confined to my hotel room, save for a brief visit to the Empire State Building. Until my departure on Friday. Returning home on Friday evening, I greeted Emma with a brief kiss on the cheek before retiring to bed, sparing her the need to fabricate excuses to reject my advances. The New York trip made me reconsider my perspective on how this situation would ultimately unfold. What did I envision as the desired outcome, and what about Stuart's wife Caroline? Over the following weeks, I had a few chances to access Larson's system. I hoped the auditors would catch on soon. The amount of money involved was substantial. By now then, I was sent to Denver. Noah informed me that the New York office was pleased with my work and wanted a similar effort in Denver. Noah seemed as puzzled as I was about the assignment. Arriving in Denver, I found the same situation. I spent a couple of days on basic system security training, and the rest up in my hotel room. While using Emma's computer, I accessed the fraudulent bank accounts belonging to the lovers. Altogether, there was more than $1 million in them. It seemed inevitable that Emma and I would be divorcing. Then I pondered, does this money count as shared property? I chuckled inwardly. Yet in the following days, thoughts of the money persist. If I sued Elson, I could likely claim a substantial sum. Could I simply take this money and consider it fair? I wrestled with the implications. Would I be exchanging an unethical deed for an illegal one? Was I capable of such actions? But they had destroyed my life, emasculated me. Was I even thinking Clearly, screw it. Let's go for it. A week later, they sent me to Miami, but this time I had a plan. I completed all the security upgrades by Tuesday and flew to the Bahamas on Wednesday morning. It was relatively straightforward to open a bank account under Larson's name there. I made another journey to the Grand Cayman and created a bank account under Emma's name. I returned to Miami in time for my trip home and landed back at I thoroughly fatigued. I went straight to bed and didn't wake up until noon on Saturday. 2 weeks later, I found myself aboard a plane destined for Boston. While the logistics offered some obstacles, I managed to cut out time to make a diversion to Zurich to create a few of accounts. Upon coming home, I resumed the process of sending funds to these offshore accounts, occasionally changing money between accounts at different intervals. This routine persisted for the next months. Every 3 weeks or so, I was dispatched on seemingly useless missions to locations like Seattle, Phoenix, and Atlanta. During one trip to Phoenix, I seized the chance to extend my journey to Mexico City to establish yet another offshore account. Back home, I routinely accessed Larson's accounting system, tweaking invoices and rerouting funds through local banks before sending them overseas. The complexity of planning and executing these actions were a source of peace, despite the pandemonium. Meanwhile, my relationship with Emma had deteriorated into one like roommates. Our encounters were confined to times when our lives crossed, as she guarded her own world from my examination. Despite my attempts to bridge the divide, our relationship remained tense. Every attempt at intimacy appeared to elicit conflicts, frequently over trivial items like as the arrangement of dishes in the dishwasher or the location of a coffee cup. I couldn't avoid the impression that these disagreements were staged to keep affection from me. I was proud of a cunning episode that occurred in November. I was able to access Emma's itinerary and noted a lunch meeting with Larson. When their lunch break began, I purchased a dozen roses and went to her office. The women there liked the flowers and commended me as a thoughtful spouse, but Emma was attending a conference. Because they were leaving for lunch, I asked if I could leave the flowers on her desk, and they agreed. Once inside Emma's office, I quickly locked the door and sat at her desk. Logging onto her computer, I updated a few of invoices and gained access to a bank account, knowing it would leave a trace. Auditors might use it as proof if they discovered anything suspect. I then repeated the procedure in Larson's office. While on Larson's computer, I seized the opportunity to delve deeper into I found into a folder containing explicit photographs of Emma in various poses. It stung, but not as much as when I first discovered the affair. I copied the folder to a thumb drive that I keep with me and walked away silently. When I returned home that evening, Emma was overjoyed with the roses, finding them wonderfully romantic. As a result, she extended a unique favor to me. Okay, a favor is a favor, and I never deny one. It ended up being one of the most delightful nights we'd had. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that the next day would bring me back to reality with my wife, her lover, and myself. About a month later, I informed Emma that I intended to enroll in a French course at a nearby community college. The seminars were held on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. She was plainly excited about the thought of 2 more evenings with her beloved. This decision was part of my strategy for gradually disengaging, and any time away from Emma relieved some of the stress. Despite my faked work excursions, I was able to attend my classes without issue. I chatted with the instructor, who was understanding and eventually received a B in the class. The situation showed no indications of stopping down, and the auditors remained unaware. I couldn't help but wonder how these people reached such success. Then I remembered Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But it is beside the point. I had a feeling things were about to finish up. Emma's company needed to settle its financial records by the end of the fiscal year, including locating any missing funds, and they were able to do so. I was away on a trip. Emma called me in a panic. I was sunbathing by the hotel pool in Los Angeles. When her call came in, she indicated an ongoing audit and that she would be delayed, so I should not attempt to contact her that evening. I quietly sipped my banana drink and told her, of course, horse dear, best of luck. I swiftly implemented my escape strategy. I transferred the funds to an account in Mexico and flew there. I withdrew the entire amount in bearer bonds and deposited it in a Los Angeles safety deposit box. Around noon, Emma called to report some issues and asked if I could return home right away. I informed her that I was still dealing With security issues but will be returning by Thursday, I ordered another round of banana drinks and smiled to myself. It appeared that the storm had finally hit the next day. Online news outlets confirmed their arrest. Headlines reported that a high-ranking CEO and sweetheart were implicated in a large-scale fraud. The accompanying photographs were unflattering, according to the investigation. The mistress took monies from various accounts for her personal use. It also stated that investigators had linked some of the money to the Grand Cayman Islands and planned to work with local officials to gain access to the accounts. The bail was set at $1 million apiece. I returned home on Thursday night and arrived in the courthouse early on Friday morning. Emma was released into my custody at 2 p.m. After I used the house as collateral for her bail, we drove home in quiet, with Emma's sobbing being the only sound. When we arrived, she ran upstairs for a shower, claiming she needed to get rid of the scent of incarceration. Memories of rushing to the shower after last year's awards dinner came flooding back. I poured myself a scotch and waited below. Emma descended a few minutes later, dressed in a long bathrobe, and took a seat opposite me. She explained that she was innocent of taking any money and stayed silent on the matter, neither confirming nor denying. I avoided broaching the subject, implying that it could be a mistake, and assuring her that we would seek legal counsel to dispute it as we waited for the trial. The atmosphere at home got frigid. Emma spoke sparingly, omitting any mention of Lawson. My daily routine consisted solely of going to work and returning home. Lawson chose to fight the claims alongside Emma, occasionally meeting with their lawyer. Emma rarely ventured outside. I had no idea if their affair continued, but I did understand that Larson's wife Caroline had filed for divorce. Emma made an effort to be kind toward me. Typically, Mom had a supper ready for me when I returned, but she never mentioned Elson or the previous year. I assumed she wanted to bury the past and save our relationship. She made a few attempts to seduce me, which I accepted. While at work, I kept up with the case by reading newspapers. According to sources, federal authorities followed the money trail from the Cayman Islands to Zurich and then Mexico before losing track of it there. Despite their attempts, no funds have been retrieved. I half expected the police to show up and arrest me, but nothing had occurred so far as the trial arrived. Emma made an extra effort to impress me, but it was too late. I consulted a divorce attorney and had the paperwork completed. The trial was quick, lasting just 3 days. By then, the media had moved on to other stories, ignoring this one. During the trial, Emma and Larson were seated at opposite ends of the defendant's table, separated by their counsel. I spent all 3 days listening to the auditors recount the crime and track down the money. The prosecution presented a compelling case linking transactions to Emma and Larson's computer logins, although the defense claimed that their passwords had been compromised. The prosecution successfully linked the transactions to their devices. It was obvious they were both in jeopardy. The prosecution characterized Elson as dominating and manipulative, while Emma was portrayed as a gullible participant. I think the jury found their arguments convincing. After 3 days, the jury adjourned to consider the verdict. Emma and I found a tiny meeting room and sat down. I was eager to bring this to an end. I dug into my pocket and pulled out the divorce papers, citing irreconcilable differences as the cause. Emma welcomed them with a sorrowful heart. I meant to bring up adultery, I confessed, and Emma promptly intervened. Although this was never confirmed, but I have evidence, I replied, pulling out a few pictures from my pocket. I handed her the first one from the stack, which showed Caroline and myself at top the Empire State Building. I'm not accusing you of a duel, but rather myself, as I admitted last year on the day of the awards dinner. Caroline, Larson's wife, came into my office. She had hired a private investigator to stalk her husband and had proof of his infidelity. I initially ignored her statements and refused to trust them till the supper I saw you two together, which confirmed her suspicions. I was devastated and later emailed her an apology. When Stuart sent me to New York with you, I realized the true purpose of the trip, for you both to be together. I was wondering how you managed to get Caroline out of town. To my astonishment, she showed up at my hotel room door one Tuesday night. We spent the evening drinking wine, expressing our anguish and learning the full scope of Larson's deception. Caroline stated that the private investigator had taped your phone calls about my trip. She offered to leave town To visit her mother before Elson had to come up with an excuse, we spent much of our time in New York in our hotel room. Aside from a visit to the Empire State Building, Caroline served as tour guide. Despite popular belief, Caroline and I kept a rigorous distance and avoided physical contact. Throughout that period, I handed her a few more photos they showed Caroline and me in Denver. She showed up in Denver. She presented certain recordings of you and your partner, primarily those in which he persuaded you to end our intimacy. It was then that I realized why our intimate relationship had wilted. Caroline and I sought peace in each other's arms while sharing a bottle of scotch. Caroline and I were not in love, we were just two forlorn souls brought together by the actions of our partners. We endeavored to mend the wounds caused by Elson and you. I spread out additional photos of Caroline and myself taken in Seattle, Phoenix, and Boston. These photographs show Caroline and myself enjoying the sights and destinations Emma and I had discussed. By then, we had developed into terrific friends with benefits. I observed thereafter presenting her with images from Miami of Caroline in a swimsuit, looking gorgeous. In addition, the photographs included another girl. The other female you see is Caroline's close friend. Remember when I stated having a desire of being with two girls at once? Let me tell you, it lived up to all of our expectations. Emma was devastated. Tears spring up in her eyes. I too felt regretful. If only she had revealed her transgressions sooner. Perhaps we could have worked it out if she had addressed me years ago, expressing her want to end our marriage. For Stuart, I would have been hurt, but not as devastated as I am now. I regret the entire incident. As I stood to leave, I said, "Farewell, Emma. I once adored you." With that, I left. By the time the decision was announced, I had finished packing everything. Both were found guilty. Stuart received a 7-year sentence when none of the money was retrieved. Emma was sentenced to 3 years in prison and 2 years on probation. My lawyer had the ability to sell the house and its remaining furnishings. I told him to pack up Emma's possessions and put them in storage. Emma's house proceeds were to be placed in an escrow account along with half of her savings. I was on an aircraft to France before midnight. As I sat on my balcony overlooking the Cat d'Ar, I could see the beach below. Although I was 3 streets away, I walked there almost every day while sipping a superb bottle of Côte d'Aron wine. I reflected on that specific year. After relocating to southern France, I hadn't been back to the States in over a year. Not since the verdict. There had been no communication with Emma. I found myself becoming a solitary figure in my chateau. I refer to it as such, despite the fact that it is only a modest house. Still, it belongs to me. Caroline has stopped by a few times, but our relationship will not proceed beyond being friends with benefits. Granted, the advantages are quite favorable. On one time, a friend joined us, and the experience was as enjoyable. Second time around, Caroline's divorce went easily, and she'll provide joy to some lucky bachelor if he can get past her trust concerns. She was aware of my intention to settle matters with Elson and Emma, and she thought it was appropriate for both of them. She is content with her life and is moving forward. As for me, I face my own issues, albeit I am not required to work due to my ill-gotten gains. I have launched a little web business. I create software for system integration, as I did with Noah. I can manage everything remotely. I've acquired a couple contracts to keep me busy. I even got an email from Noah who acknowledged my efforts and offered to refer other clients. I communicated my appreciation. The ladies at the patisserie find my attempts to speak French entertaining, and they tread to teach me new terms every day. I believe I will have mastered it by the time I am a century old. I've made progress in dealing with Emma's betrayal and our divorce, but I'm having trouble rationalizing my own decisions. I remember studying a case in my undergraduate psychology class. It described the disappearance of a husband who reappeared years later. According to the case, he disappeared after leaving work one day. He lived in the San Francisco Bay Area with his wife and 2 small children. His early departure from work coincided with the Oakland Athletics World Series game against the San Francisco Giants. The case study described how, when he left his employment, the Loma Prieta earthquake struck. He narrowly escaped death when bricks and large debris from the building fell on either side of him. In that moment, he realized the gravity of the situation, which jolted him awake. Reflecting on his life, he realized he was deeply unhappy and had unfulfilled desires. He packed up quickly and left his wife and children without saying anything. Authorities found the man 4 years later after he had built a nice marriage and 1 child. After being arrested by the police, he received a psychological evaluation. The doctor decided that the man's near-death experience had drastically influenced his worldview. He came to see the world as essentially unstable, with the continual possibility of death looming. As a result, he abandoned his duties and left. However, over time he became aware, on a subliminal level, that he did not live in a reality where death lurked around every corner. As a result, he gradually returned to his former satisfied life, resuming his role as a happily married family man. Perhaps as my reality, when I was in love and could trust individuals I cared about, I maintained my integrity and honesty. Taxes were filed correctly, there were no lies, and the thoughts of others were never an issue. Emma was my everything. My affection for her was unwavering. However, the pain of losing a loved one, particularly via betrayal, is the most intense. It's an ache that penetrates the soul and constricts the heart. With a sudden change in my surroundings, I morphed into someone unfamiliar. I'm not happy that this version of myself exists. Only in my imagination. I'm faced with decisions. Do I remain alone, protecting my soul from the darker forces within, or should I gently let them back in, gradually reintroducing the world to my better self? But the answer eludes me. That small blonde girl at the patisserie does catch my attention. I hope you enjoy that story. Here is another one. It was midweek, and the house was once again unoccupied. My wife, Darcy, and twin girls were not at home as usual. I don't believe it is unfair for a man to expect his family to be home when he arrives. It wasn't always like this until 6 months ago. I could expect a warm greeting and a great supper. Not anymore. Something changed, and I'm not convinced it's for the best. Darcy and I had been married for 6 years. We met in high school and married immediately after I graduated college. I'd never been with another girl. Darcy was typical in every sense, and I felt at ease being married to her. She had brown hair, brown eyes, an attractive physique, and normal breasts. She didn't stand out. She blended in. As a result, I never questioned her fidelity. Maybe that's why I should have. We had 2 lovely 4-year-old twin daughters, Janet and Janice. I cared deeply about them. Darcy did not appear to feel the same way. She didn't appreciate the childbirth and insisted that I get fixed right away. For the first few years, she looked forward to my arrival home so that I could care for the twins. We then met Bill and Emily. Not Emily. Mercer couldn't have her own children and would offer to babysit whenever possible. Darcy felt elated. She might leave the house at any time to go shopping or attend to other personal matters. I swear, within 3 months, the twins spent more time with Auntie Em than they did with their own mother. The 4 of them would often go out together, but Emily would generally keep an eye on the girls while Darcy ran around. Darcy's dashing around had me wondering what was up to. It didn't seem necessary to be gone so frequently to sustain a typical household. Overall, I was pleased with my life. I had a good career, a great house, a late model car, and an ideal family. Darcy and I would occasionally go out while Bill and Emily looked after the twins. On weekends, the 4 of us would get together to play cards or eat BBQ. I liked Bill and appreciated his company. I wasn't sure about Emily, but Darcy seems to adore her. My anxiety about how my wife spent her free time did not compel me to investigate further. I merely took a mental note of it and continued on.
A Tuesday morning, things became intriguing. I parked my BMW in my designated location at work. I was high
enough up the food chain to get a parking spot, albeit not a good one. It was near the end of the lot and slanted, but it was preferable to not having a slot. A level parking lot in our town was unusual. Why did the founding fathers chose such a hilly area to build a city on has always puzzled me. I had barely been at work for approximately an hour before I had to leave for a call. I believe the terrible parking spot saved my life. It had not rained in several days, yet there was a moist spot on the ground near my front wheel. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second thought, but not today. It flowed across the asphalt in little sparkling rivulets. The liquid had a metallic glitter, and I was compelled to touch it with my finger. It wasn't water. The BMW was less than a year old, and I couldn't believe that anything had broken. I absolutely did not want to drive it. 20 minutes later, a mechanic was on his back inspecting the underneath of my vehicle. I apologize, Mr. Evans, but I will have to report this to the police. A broken brake line must be reported to the police. Sorry, but this does not make sense. I'm not an expert on this subject, but the line did not break or come loose. It had been tampered with. You mean it got cut? No, it was not cut. It appears that it was filed or sanded down with something. Things like these do not happen by a mistake with metal flex lines. This was done with intent. Don't touch anything. Let the cops handle it. How far might? I've gone 2 blocks at most with this town's hills. The entire system would have been drained. You would have had a hell of a ride and an unpleasant stop. Let us leave this and go to the shop. I may provide you with a loaner till the cops have finished investigating. The BMW had not yet arrived when I left work. I concluded the day with the free rental car and returned home at my usual time. Darcy was home and she seemed surprised to see me. Hello, honey, have you had a good day? Where's your car? Why do you drive a Ford? Something appeared suspicious. Why did she opt to stay home today? Was she waiting for a telephone call? I realized she didn't have supper prepared. I got the impression she didn't expect me to come home at all. Even the twins were there to welcome me. The Beamer was due for a 30M check. They won't be able to access it until tomorrow. What's for supper? I do not smell anything. I didn't see a cause to tell her about the brake line. Darcy stammered around a little. I thought we could order in tonight and wait to see what you wanted. Pizza is fine. I am going up to take a shower. Before I went underwater, I could hear Darcy talking on the phone. Things were becoming fascinating. The following day, I received an early visitor at work. Hello, Robert Evans. My name is Lieutenant Daniel Green. Have you got a minute? Of course. Is it about the car? Daniel Green was a big man but not overweight, except for the rosy glow on his skin. He wore wire-framed glasses and had close-cropped hair. He gave the impression of being very efficient. Mr. Evans, we are finished with the car and you can pick it up at any time from the shop. Your mechanic was installing a new brake line. As we were leaving, we have a few inquiries. If you do not mind, am I under suspicion of anything? No, absolutely not. However, we feel there is something shady going on. Have you recently argued or disagreed with anyone? Is anyone angry at you or carrying a grudge? Not that I know of. Was that mechanic correct? Is someone setting me up? Could I have been killed, Mr. Evans? Someone was undoubtedly hoping to inflict you bodily injury and even death. It was purely an amateur job. However, I do not believe you would have been killed. However, it is conceivable whoever did that did not bother to turn off the airbags. That automobile features front and side airbags. Unless you were moving very fast, I do not believe you would have been killed. However, that isn't the purpose. Just because they didn't realize what they were doing doesn't mean they didn't intend to murder you. Damn, that was reassuring. I suppose if someone is attempting to kill you, it is better if they are incompetent rather than dying. I could be maimed for life. Great. What should we do now? Take my card. Please call me if anything comes to mind. In the meantime, take care. I bet my next salary that they'll try again. That is extremely encouraging. I will absolutely think about that. As he exited the door, Lieutenant Green paused and turned. By the way, how are things in your marriage? I did not respond, and I don't think he expected me to. I left work shortly after and returned home. The house was unoccupied. We had a little room that served as an office of sorts. It included our personal computer, a desk, and a small filing cabinet. I sat at my desk for some minutes with a cold. Foster is trying to figure out what to do. Knowing that someone wants you dead is, to put it mildly, disturbing. I'm a good man. I never cheated anyone. Why would someone desire for my death? I believed my marriage was good. Darcy never really complained about anything. I gave her a nice home, a good car, a bunch of credit cards, and 2 lovely children. What more could she want? Darcy paid all of the household bills. She took care of the checkbook. She paid for electricity, auto payments, mortgages, credit cards, and insurance policies. Insurance is insurance on a whim. I took the insurance folder. Like most young couples, we were severely underfunded. When you are young, you do not consider the idea of dying. I had a minor insurance policy, completed work for $50,000. Aside from that, I just had home mortgage insurance, which Darcy insisted on. If I died, she would get the house entirely. It was cheap because I was still young, so I added it to my mortgage payment. I never opened the file cabinet or the checkbook. Darcy was aware of this, and it proved to be a mistake. She was meticulous. Her financial account was always accurate to the penny. She always knew where every file and receipt was. The mortgage payment covered the cost of homeowners insurance, thus there was no documentation for it. My job in insurance was paid for through payroll deductions. Why were there $250 receipts in the same month made out to Republic National? For insurance, I had never dealt with that company and had no knowledge of any of their insurance plans. I put the receipts in my pocket and continued looking. Nothing weird came up. Darcy maintained paperwork on everything. It was a compulsive thing for her. I felt like I wasn't supposed to know about this, but she couldn't help herself. She felt compelled to keep the payment proof. I called the Mercer home. Emily had the kids and said Darcy was out shopping. She was friendly yet evasive. I called Darcy's cell phone, but it was turned off. Interesting. I decided to go for lunch and then investigate. Robert Evans, it's nice to see you here. What can I do for you? Debbie Martin was the lady behind Republican National Insurance's customer service desk, or at least that was her name when we attended high school. Together she had her own private office, and the desk name plate read Reynolds. I remember her because she was the only girl to ever ask me out, although everyone knew Darcy and I were in a relationship. She asked, just in case. Of course I turned her down. Her hair was very short and auburn-colored. She had a nice tan and her makeup was flawless. Well, Debbie, how are you? I haven't seen you since high school and we live in the same town. Well and kicking. It's nice to see you again. I'm sorry to learn about your marriage. Now she had my whole attention. What was she sorry to hear about? I had a strong suspicion that something was going on, and a random comment from a woman I hadn't seen in years exacerbated the situation. I couldn't and didn't respond to what Debbie had just said. She picked up on this right away. Oh, I'm so sorry. Forget what I said, Noah. I was way out of line. Sometimes my mouth gets away from me. Debbie was tripping all over herself, attempting to undo what couldn't be done. She said it, and I remember it. I eventually broke the tense silence by asking the question I came looking for an answer. Can you explain what these receipts are? For she took them from my hand, appearing relieved that I had decided not to pursue the earlier debate. After a few keyboard taps, she sighed and gave me a pitiful expression. Noah, I hate to tell it, but it appears like this reunion is deteriorating rapidly. I didn't respond. She clicked a few more buttons before leaning back in her chair. Do you know someone called Philip Chase? No, I cannot say I do. Is there a reason I should know him? Debbie reached around and rummaged through some magazines on the credenza beside her desk. She made her choice and opened it. That's Philip Chase. Have you seen him before? Yes, I have. He was at a cookout that my neighbors hosted around 6 months ago. I remember him clearly because I thought he was paying too much attention to my wife. I even remember mentioning it to Darcy at the time. What does he have to do with it? Debbie stood up and closed the office door. After returning to her desk, she leaned forward, looking directly into my eyes. Her cheerful demeanor had become stern. It was clear that she did not want to say what needed to be said. Darcy has been having lunch with Philip Chase many times a week for the past 3 months. Sometimes they are lengthy lunches. Philip has mentioned to his co-workers that they aim to marry in the near future. Except for myself, no one else in the workplace knows Darcy. I knew she was married to you. That's why I misspoke the first time I saw you. I assumed you were coming to resolve some insurance problems regarding a pending divorce. I'm sorry for being inconsiderate. Do you know this guy? We both work in the same building and for the same company. I've always felt he was an and didn't understand what Darcy saw in him, especially when she has you. I thought the last section of that comment interesting. What were the receipts for? Technically, you should know you purchased $250,000 term life insurance plans about a month ago. This was the initial payment for those policies. That is the most amount
you could receive on such policies without a physical. Both plans provide double indemnity in the event of
accidental death. That is a cool million. I'm betting you had no idea what was going on based on your expression. Just curious who wrote these policies for me. Debbie took a brief check at the screen. Surprise. It was your favorite insurance representative, Phil Chase. I presume I have to sign something at some point. Debbie adjusted the screen so we could both see it, then paged through both documents. The signature looked like mine, and surprisingly it was identical in both places, as if it were a copy or a reproduction. We sat and looked at each other. She was waiting for me to say something, and I had no idea what to say. Finally, I dug into my coat pocket and passed Daniel Green's card over to her. Can you phone this guy and explain what's happening? I'm concerned if I do that, some of my credibility will be destroyed. Debbie stared at the card, then back at me. Something else is happening here, isn't it, Noah? Yeah, I'm afraid so. As I stood up to go, she offered one final question. Am I going to see you again? I thought about the question for a long time, it was probably only a fraction of a second in real time, yet it had a lasting impression on me, professional or social either. I motioned to the nameplate on her desk. How about Mr. Reynolds? He is long gone, we both smiled as I walked out the door. It was still early afternoon when I arrived at the vacant house. I sat down in my comfortable chair with a long neck and reflected about the situation in the afternoon. It became evident that Darcy had met Philip during the party the Mercers gave. Where did they know Philip? But why did they invite him? Why haven't I seen him at any functions or parties since then? How did Darcy and Philly get so close in such a short time? How close were they? It seems that there were more questions than answers at this stage. When the doorbell rang, I switched to coffee. Things would become a little clearer. Darcy received a messenger mail addressed to him and marked personal. After some bickering, the delivery guy allowed me to sign for it. It was one of those envelopes that you couldn't open without completely damaging it. I sat at the kitchen table holding the envelope and a new cup of coffee. I only needed a razor blade and a bottle of rubber cement to solve the envelope problem. What disturbed me the most about the envelope was its contents. After a cursory peek at the legalized document, I went into the den and turned on the computer and scanner. 5 minutes later, Detective Green received a copy of the document via email. I am confident that the information gathered this manner does not meet all of today's sophisticated legal requirements, but I simply waited for him to have the information. The document was full of complex legal terminology and originated from a law office around 50 m away. It was a legal arrangement between William and Emily Mercer to adopt the twins. Darcy gave up all parental rights to the girls and handed them over to the Mercers completely. There was no mention of my name or any other personal information in the text. It was as though I did not exist. Many things were obvious now. I was now certain that I needed to be more cautious about having mishaps. I left Darcy a note explaining, meaning that I had to leave town for a few days for business. I was confident she'd notice it because it was on top of her freshly delivered package. I double-checked to ensure that it had not been opened. I was looking forward to spending a few nights at a motel. Daniel Green was waiting for me when I got to work the next day. He was all grins. I enjoy it when things come together. I hope I was at least somewhat useful. It was really helpful when we were able to link a name to the fingerprints located on your vehicle fender. I simply wanted to let you know that we plan to question all 4 folks this morning. We don't believe Bill Mercer is involved, but we need to question him to be sure. You might wish to make arrangements for someone to sit with your daughters if required. My policemen detest babysitting. I was not genuinely wounded. What might you charge them with? Your wife and Mr. Chase will face charges of conspiracy to commit murder. Emily Mercer will most likely be charged as an accessory to the same offense. They won't take much time, yet they could have saved your life. That is crucial to me and well worth the effort. Can your people bring my daughters to the office? I don't see that as a problem. Debbie Reynolds arrived at my office around 30 minutes after Detective Green had left. Hello, Noah. I hope you do not mind an unannounced visit. Your police lieutenant suggested that you consider hiring a babysitter for your daughters. I took the remainder of the day off just in case. I also wanted to inform you that you are now officially underinsured. I Canal your 2 double indemnity plans. You should really consider acquiring more life insurance. I was happy to see Debbie and enjoyed the silliness she brought with her. I'm delighted you arrived. The females will most likely be gone for a long, so you may tell me everything you know about the mysterious Mr. Reynolds the twins didn't arrive for another hour. Debbie had a lot of time to tell me about her catastrophic marriage. She also informed me about various attempts she made to separate Darcy and me when we were still in high school. Of course, I was completely unaware of anything, but Darcy appears to have been aware of her attempts. Debbie quickly became friends with the girls, surpassing Emily in terms of rapport. I was completely out of the picture. They were a handful at their age, so I was glad to have helped. 2 hours later, Darcy called me. Robert, I'm in trouble. There was a huge error and I need you to come down to the police station and post my bail. What happens after bail? What do you post bail for? What were you arrested for? It's complicated, Noah. I'll explain when you get here. Can you come here soon? Darcy, I'm sort of stuck at the office. I will call your parents. I'm confident they will be able to help you. No, Noah, do not call my folks. They will not comprehend. You need to come down here. Please hurry. I did not respond. Noah, are you there? Noah, what's wrong? Are you coming down? No. "Darcy, I will not come down. I'll call your folks for you. Goodbye." She was still, pleading as I hung up the phone.